Hello, my dear audience. Today is a special day. Uh, it's my turn to talk to former CIA officer, Mr. John Ramirez. We have a lot to cover. I'm very excited for this interview. Um, he was so cautious just before the holidays to jump on my podcast. Actually, I have to thank his wife for making a little bit of room in the schedule of this very busy man. So let me introduce you guys. Well, I don't. He doesn't need any introduction, but here he is, the man of the hour, Mr. John Ramirez. Hello, sir.
Hi, Max. Good to be here.
Well, thank you very much for jumping on my show. I've seen many of your interviews lately. Um, so I have a lot of questions, but shall we kick this off with the recent legislation within the Congress and your thoughts, sir?
Well, just to be clear, that the legislation is not a law yet. It needs to go through another vote, actually, in the Senate, and it's almost a pro forma. That is a form. It's just a formality. Uh, Many things happened to this legislation. It started out in the House of Representatives as House Resolution 4350, and then actually the Senate got a head start with its Senate bill. And so the Senate got a head start, and then the House Armed Services Committee then did its NDAA. And so you have two NDAA bills, and they were sort of combined together in a way that the House resolution then was sent over to the Senate um, for discussion and for debate. And so the Senate bill was reconciled with the House bill, and it came out with a number, and I don't remember. I think it's 2972, but correct me if I'm wrong. I probably am wrong. But that legislation got stalled in the Senate. As you know, there were many amendments to it.
Yeah.
And so one of the primary stalls was this Uyghur Forced Labor Act that prevented the Department of Defense and U.S. government from purchasing um, uh, solar
Chinese
panels
weapon. Oh,
made from China, but with Uyghur forced labor involved in making those panels.
yeah.
And that was sorted out very late in the process. So the two committees, Armed Services Committee in the Senate and the House, got together, sorted out the language. And then something else happened. The actual bill came out as Senate Bill 1605, I believe. And so this is very amusing. So 1605 actually has a different name. It has to do with a memorial in Orlando, Florida, called the Pulse, Pulse Memorial in Orlando, Florida. That's the name of the actual NDAA. And so a senator from Florida who wanted this bill passed that would affect Orlando, Florida, it's some memorial, kind of put a parliamentary stall on it and had the entire NDAA be part of his bill to designate this memorial in Orlando, Florida.
Right.
And so the actual bill has a funny name, but the short title is the National Defense Authorization Act FY 2022. That's the short title. The long title has something to do with a Pulse Memorial. They actually gave the address in Orlando, Florida, and that's the formal name of the bill. And that's how Congress works. And so now that went to the Rules, and so the Rules Committee, because that changed, the Rules Committee got it and said, okay, that's fine. And then it went back to the Senate, and the Senate has to vote on it. It's probably just like I say, a formality. It'll go through and it'll land on the president's desk. He signs it, becomes public law, and from there it can go forward. And everything I said before, I'm just going from memory because I have to read the same web pages everybody else reads, and so I'm sure Douglas Dean Johnson will correct me on any mistakes I made, and he's free to do so because he has the actual he follows this on almost an hourly basis, it seems like. So he might correct me on the procedure and the process that happened. But it's now Senate 1605, and it just needs to be like passed through the Senate with probably no problem whatsoever, and it'll go to the president, and then it'll become law.
For sure. Mr. Ramirez, let's move to the next topic, or the next question, actually. Now, you have been very vocal about the topic for a while now. I've seen you in many interviews. So you have told before you decided to be more outspoken since 2017, where there was a lot of media coverage on the topic. Now, could you tell me a little bit about your time in the CIA? For example, which directorate did you belong to?
I worked in 2 directorates. This is an opportunity to actually explain how CIA is organized.
Please do.
They're not as forthcoming as they used to be. It used to be
Yeah.
that they would publish their organization chart, and the last organization chart CIA publicly offered was in 2016. And so that's
Yeah.
the only one I have. But there is a CIA, the agency, and underneath it is and the director of CIA is the only person in CIA that is actually appointed by Congress. It's a nomination by the president, and Congress approves that appointment.
Right.
And all appointments in the Senate, they approve it, and so he becomes director of CIA. No other department can say that, because a lot of the positions are political appointees, but we only have one political appointee, and that's the director. The director then can designate a deputy, which usually comes from within the rank and file, not necessarily. And underneath that are also rank and file officers in deputy directorates. And so you have the director, the deputy director. There's an executive director that runs the agency on a day-to-day basis, more like a chief operating officer. And
Right,
then
yeah.
underneath that are several, I would call them executive vice presidents in a company. They're the deputy directors.
It's like a mafia structure, right? You have the capo,
yeah, the consigliere,
yeah, exactly.
Not to say the CIA is like run like the mafia, but
some would agree. No.
So anyway, so there's several deputy directors for various business lines, and so there's one for science and technology. And so I came into CIA. I was in the deputy directorate of science and technology, and underneath that are several offices. I was in an office called Office of SIGINT, or Signals Intelligence Operations. And underneath that, there was a division that did signals analysis.
Right.
And underneath that, I did ELINT. So there was like several layers when I entered as a GS8, by the way. That's how I entered the CIA, as a GS8. So that was that. And I got promoted through the ranks. And somewhere along the line, you're kind of expected to like broaden your horizons. So you just can't stay in. I mean, you could, but it's not good for your career to just stay in one place. So they want you to go out and do a rotational tour somewhere else to see how other offices do their lines of business. And so the logical one for me was in the other deputy directorate, the deputy directorate of intelligence. So I went from science and technology to intelligence. And underneath there was an office called the Office of Scientific and Weapons Research.
Right.
Now, here's the significance of Office of Scientific and Weapons Research. Back in 1949, the predecessor of that office was called the Office of Scientific Intelligence. That was the UFO office of CIA, created in.
Whoa! Please rewind. Please rewind. That was the UFO office of the CIA?
Yeah, the Office of Scientific Intelligence had the UFO account. They did, They did many, many, many things. But UFOs were studied in that office. So you can look at FOIA requests, and you will see in the FOIA a reference to OSI. It's not the Office of Special Investigations. that Richard Doty was a part of. This is the
No, yeah.
Office of Scientific Intelligence and the Director of Intelligence, which was called something else back then. It was called the Director of Research or something. Names changed. But the OSI was the office that looked at anything that do with like the science of how things worked. And so that office actually had the UFO account. And
Okay, so you
so
you were working among the directorates for in that
no,
office.
no, I was explaining that the office that I worked in, the predecessor was the UFO office.
Sure, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
and the
but did,
Directorate of Intelligence was formerly I think it was called the Director of Research or something like that. It's so
yeah, so
long ago.
I have an immediate question for you.
Yeah,
Did you have access to their files, your predecessor?
my predecessor office, I
Yeah.
had access to anything that was within my job description. Because
Okay.
once you're cleared for top secret SCI,
Yeah.
if your job requires to have access to older data to do
Yeah.
research on something you're working on currently, you have that access.
Your work, the work you were doing at the time, did that allow you to access UFO files?
No, no. So the UFO files were actually when the when the Defense Intelligence Agency was set up as the military intelligence agency, and they took military intelligence out of CIA and gave it to DoD.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that work went over that way.
Okay.
And so there were some ancillary work in that, primarily dealing with like the science and technology of the phenomenon. But as far as the nuts and bolts, I think that's more DIA's kind of purview, because they were more worried about threats, whereas we're more worried about how things worked, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay, so I was in OSWR, and I was in the Defensive Systems Division, and underneath that was a branch that dealt with like missile defense.
Yeah.
And so that's my first encounter, was that the Russians, I was an analyst for ballistic missile defense radars in the Soviet Union and later in Russia. And those radars started detecting objects in the sky, which caused
Right.
their alert levels to rise. And they were not like satellites that they normally would track. And of course, they're not ballistic missiles that we would launch. So there's no surprise attack from us, but they were seeing things that were moving very, very fast. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
that alerted them to say, okay, we need to increase our readiness. And so we detected the increase in readiness. And when you look back at the signals used by those radars, you can tell they were tracking something.
Right.
And I can't describe how I know that, because that's what gets into NDA. That's a source and method of analysis. I can't
This is
discuss
classified information.
the actual how we know that that radar was in tracking modes and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that requires a lot of technical analysis. And so the technical analysis showed that they were tracking something.
Just one question. You don't
Yeah.
have to answer it, but was there any signature it could track?
It's a radar, so it sends a beam of energy out and it bounces off something, and that energy comes back to the radar.
Okay.
And this radar was designed to track ballistic missiles. I stated before that the reentry vehicles that are dropped off by the post-boost vehicle. I'm getting very technical now. It's a cone shape. It's a cone shape. It's a cone shape reentry vehicle. Inside is what's called a physics package, which is the actual warhead.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
cone shape can travel at 8 kilometers per second.
Wow.
And so that radar is very capable of tracking something that fast. And
Yeah.
be able to discriminate targets that fast. So you can throw like all kinds of junk at it. You can throw false targets at it, and you can do other things. And that also gets an NDA, how we deceive a foreign ballistic missile defense system.
Yes.
That gets into very serious NDA. So I can't describe that, but the word chaff is not classified. That's something that we did during World War II, throw out of bombers these metallic foils to confuse German radar.
Right.
So it's basically, in an unclassified way, think of it that way.
Yeah.
But this radar was able to like pick off what's real and what's not real. They can pick off the target. So they were very robust radars.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so long story short, okay, so the Pentagon wanted to know exactly what happened. And so I'm sure the top layers of the Pentagon, the very top management, went to DIA because that's their go-to.
Yeah.
But they also come to CIA as well. We're sort of like
Right.
a second opinion. Not that we would disagree with DIA, but they do come to us as well. And I was asked to write a memorandum for the Deputy Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
And so the Deputy Secretary of Defense was John Deutsch. He later became CIA Director, but back then he was Deputy Secretary of Defense. And he wanted to know what's going on. And so I did the analysis and provided a memorandum for him of my description of what went on, and hand delivered it with my colleague to the Pentagon. Went to his office and hand delivered it to one of his staff officers that were like one of the gatekeepers. I didn't get to meet him or anything like that, but there was that one last officer in front of his door. And
right.
So I delivered it to him. And so the Pentagon was aware that the Russians were detecting something that was not a satellite and was not any missile.
But were your own systems at the time not detecting anything?
That's for DOD to answer, because one thing that in CIA, we really did not look at our own country. CIA's charter looks at foreign countries.
So the CIA does not really look at what's entering American
U.S. airspace. No, that's DOD's job. And that's
DOD.
Northern Command, NORAD. Those folks will look at what's entering U.S. airspace. Now, yes, U.S. Space Force. That's part of their job.
So this might be a good segue to the next question. Why are the American organizations like CIA, DOD, NORAD working so separately and actually completely on their own little islands without really sharing information?
No, there is some sharing of information. It comes at a much higher level. But the day-to-day CIA, what we do at CIA is primarily to support the collection of intelligence by CIA assets. So a lot of the scientific technology that we would deploy is designed to protect our case officers overseas who might be talking to a foreign agent. That is a foreigner who has access to information about what their governments are doing, and provide that information to us. We need to keep the case officer and that agent safe from surveillance. So a lot of our capabilities are designed to protect that operation, to detect if there's any kind of counter surveillance against that agent or our officer. And so a lot of gadgets are designed for that, also to collect things quietly.
Yes.
So that they're not detected. And again, that's getting close to sources and methods, so I can't say too much about it. But we do have advanced capabilities to do that. And some of them we released because they were so comical that we released them later because, obviously they did not work.
Right.
But there's some stories I can tell you about that. But that's what S&T is about. It's about the collection of that type of signal or signature to help assist our operations to be able to collect information from a foreign agent. Because after all, CIA primarily is a human intelligence organization.
Yes.
The director of operations, that's what they do for a living. And that's what distinguishes CIA from the other alphabet soups.
Sure.
In the intelligence community. So that's what we do.
Okay. So during your time at the CIA, this is a multiple question.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably elaborated on this before, but during your time, what could you tell or see about UAP activity, and what was investigated within the ranks of the CIA? And to continue, go forward with the question, What can you tell me something about the CIA involvement historically on UAP and presently?
Well, for me, presently is stops at 2009 because that's when I retired. And so I really already stated in my presentation that CIA said to contain no unclassified information. I told the story about how if we see orbs in the sky, how that would be handled in the
Right.
modern intelligence community.
Yeah.
Other than that, we just have a lot of historical records that you can FOIA. And so I can't relate to you anything more than what anyone else can FOIA. I can say that there was an ongoing investigation, as we all know.
Yeah.
And so on the CIA side, it's like I said, it's about what is it and how does it work? That's the science and technology side. If you look at Project Blue Book, it's kind of a different kind of flavor. And that's because the DoD side, I mean, they're basically about defense, national defense, defense against threats.
Right.
Ours is more science and technology in the sense that we're looking at weapon systems also, but whereas the DoD might be looking at weapon systems that are already deployed that can be a threat to what we already have flying, and they want to know everything about what's flying by another country, we're looking at what's still in the design and planning stages.
Right.
All right. So that's what CIA does best. And so when you look at something that's in the design and planning stage, it's going to be a blueprint. It's going to be some kind of like a wire diagram, a wireframe diagram inside somebody's computer. You know, it's going to be something that you're going to have special access to get into. And so that's why we recruit people who have that access, which is why we need to protect their lives, not only of our officers who reach out and find those people, but also once they're found and vetted and are working for the US government, we need to protect their lives. So a lot of the NDA is not because we are hiding anything. We're basically, if 10 people know about a secret project in a foreign country of an exotic weapon system, 10 people, let's say, and they're working on it, they're top 10 engineers. And one of those engineers are working for us. And we say, oh, we know about that. That other country knows only 10 people know, and we know who to knock on doors, right? And so we don't want that to happen.
Yeah. So here's my other question. So to do your job properly, you have to have incredible knowledge about these weapon systems, adversary weapon systems, and making sure before they get developed properly, you know how they function, etc., so you can act whenever they're being deployed against America, right? Now, to have this information, you have to have a lot of historical information. Now, I know for a fact that on the CIA's payroll are actually a lot of historians. Have you ever asked one of those historian colleagues within the CIA about UAP?
No, I didn't have any chance to really. Not directly. The historical intelligence collection was there. I actually went into the historical intelligence collection, which was on the ground floor of CIA, because I was interested in the MK Ultra program, and it was all there. So I could just pull out volumes and just read them left and right. I never looked at the UFO issue at all. I looked at MK Ultra. I was also interested in remote viewing, and I found that, but not about UFOs directly. So my interest in UFOs really didn't blossom at CIA until, because I came with that interest, but professionally it didn't happen until, like I described, that we were seeing the Russians tracking things over their airspace that were unusual, that had interesting flight characteristics. You know, those 5 properties that Lou describes, 5 properties of observables, yes. And when the Russians are using their radars to detect that and are seeing that, and we can see what the radars are doing, that's when you get interested in the UFO issue.
Did you have access to maybe conversations the Russians had when they were actually looking at the radar data when these things were passing through their radar systems? And If we talk about observables, did they have 5 or maybe even more?
I don't know what they discussed. As far as getting into what they discussed, if they discussed anything, that would be like communications intelligence. That
Right.
would be in NSA's bailiwick. That's what the National Security Agency does. They collect communications intelligence,
Yeah.
and they collect computer intelligence, computer network exploitation.
Yeah, but wouldn't it
So,
be very helpful for you to get
oh, if I
that
had
in?
access to a gate, but my job was to look at the radar,
Yeah.
not necessarily look at how. I mean, I wasn't in the Russian radar control room, privy to what they were saying,
I
but
get it. I
I
get it.
can tell that with their instruments they use, their radars, I can tell that they were putting them in different modes of operation that suggest they're tracking something very, very fast.
Yeah. So, what is it? What did you find about what these Russians were tracking? What what came to your what got into your desk? What did?
Well, it's just objects. Basically, they were tracking objects. There was no description of the objects. They were
Right.
just very fast objects that look like um, they looked like a polar um, exit, like over the Arctic Circle, coming over Russian airspace. And so that's
Like a
basically what
polar exit?
a polar. I would call it a polar exit. I mean, I use the word exit,
The,
a polar excursion. It was they were coming out of the not inside the North Pole, but coming over the poles, and they were looking over the poles because
are
that's
we
usually
talking?
where.
Are we talking through the atmosphere or?
Oh yeah, yeah, they're
Wow.
coming. Yeah, exactly. They were flying exo-atmospherically, that is outside the atmosphere, and then endo-atmospherically, and they would like look at the radar picture, and there are other radars that would like start tracking these things. And so that's the information we got. As a ballistic missile defense analyst, I was more interested in how that radar would perform. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to know, okay, what modes of operation is this radar using to track something going that fast? And so that's the analytical side of it. But as for the policymaker side or for the officials, they were more interested in so what are the Russians seeing? So given that information that I provide, they could probably go to other parts of the Department of Defense and get more information. For example, from
Right.
NASIC, National Air and Space Intelligence Center, from MISIC, which is the Missile and Space Intelligence Center in Huntsville, Alabama. So they'll go to Wright Pat in Dayton, Ohio, and MISIC and Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, to get that information.
Now I can imagine that if the Russians are tracking things that are coming through the North, the pole atmosphere,
Yeah,
that must have been very disturbing, not just to them, but also to the USA. Because if the Russians don't know what it is and we don't know what is it, right?
right. And so the concern was that we did not want them to think that it was a surprise attack.
Right.
These are not ballistic missiles coming at them, and they know that because they would look for launch indications. I mean, they can see our launch signatures as we can see their launch signatures. They can see the launch plumes. We can see their launch plumes. When we test our missiles from that Vandenberg Air Force Base, they know. And they test theirs from Tyuratam or Plesetsk, we know. And so we have that exchange of information. The good
Yeah.
news story is that as part of the START treaty, START 2, we started to exchange that missile information where we tell each other when we're launching ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know.
So you don't start a war.
Right,
Back.
exactly. I don't know if it's because of what we were seeing over their airspace or what they were seeing over our airspace, but it became crucial that when we launched ballistic missiles for testing, which we're allowed to do under treaty, now we tell each other, we're going to launch a ballistic missile on this date between this period of time. So actually, when we do a missile test, we know they're waiting for us to launch the missile. When they do a missile test, they know that we're waiting and we're watching them launch a ballistic missile. And now with the new START, we can actually, like exchange up to 5 times to exchange the actual data of these
Right.
missiles. When we're building a new missile, we actually tell them the telemetry of that new missile. When they build a new missile, they give us the telemetry of their new missile. That's how
Yes.
close it is, to the point that it's actually on-site inspections of the silos. Now, this couldn't have happened during the Cold War at all.
No.
But
No.
there seems to be a heightened awareness that we need to prevent a nuclear launch by mistake.
Yeah.
And whether that was because of what we see from these UAPs or not, I don't know. That's a good question for a policymaker to explain. But I have to believe that has something to do with it. And again, I'm a firm believer in the UAP message, that what they're trying to tell us: don't blow yourself up, don't screw this up. You have a beautiful planet, and you're screwing it up. And so if that's the result of it, I say, yeah, that's great. That's a good way to proceed.
Well, I always like to talk with my American friends about one of the most high-profile Dutch cases we had. Maybe you are aware of. In my country, we have a small place called Soesterberg. During the Cold War, it was a shared base with the Americans. The Americans had a site of the military air base called Camp New Amsterdam. And, they stored nuclear weapons over there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 1979, about 12 Dutch military men were witness to a UAP flying over and probably taking out the warhead. But that brings me, that is to elaborate on whatever they are doing here is something to prohibit us from, blowing up the planet, I guess. So if you look at the radar data the Russians were seeing and you guys were seeing, is there anything about the behavior you could talk about these things? We know they came from through the atmosphere, but was there anything about the speed, the maneuvers they made, which was observable on the radar data at the time?
They were going very, very fast, and that's all I can say. They were going very, very fast, and
right.
The actual data, I believe NSA probably has that actual data, because the U.S. SIGINT system that collects electronic intelligence, is the signals emanated by weapon systems like radars, missile seekers, etc. The NSA actually has that charter first and foremost. What we do is we are looking at testing programs for early testing of weapon systems before they get deployed by the Russians. And so we have that as part of our charter. Once it's deployed, we might follow up on it, but NSA does a great job of following up on it. And so we're just looking at the early tests of the newer stuff. So as far as this radar is concerned, the Pechora radar, it was a deployed system. And so we monitor that radar primarily. Well, it's interesting that, when we launch the NRO launches one of our satellites, we don't make it a secret anymore. We actually say, you can actually live on YouTube watch the launch of a National Reconnaissance Office satellite, and they tell you it's from the NRO, and they tell you exactly, you can watch the whole launch. Well, back before we did that, when it was all very secret, we wanted to know how fast can the Russians actually find that satellite or find that launch. And it usually takes about an orbit, one orbit, and they nailed it. And so that's the kind of thing we were looking at, is how well can their systems work.
Yeah.
And we know what the signals look like coming out of there, and we can simulate and model and simulate those signals in a computer using actual reentry vehicles that we would deploy. And so I can say this because it's an older system. The Minuteman III carried something called the Mark 12A reentry vehicle. I can say this too, it's the W78 warhead in the Mark 12A. And so we knew how fast this can fly. We knew the kind of ways that the system can hide from Russian sensors. And so when we look at their radars, we would like do a modeling simulation kind of game inside the computer to see this is what we know about the signals from the Russian side. This is what we know about our weapon systems. How well can they track how well can they perform against a real threat? And so that's what we were studying. As far as the actual objects that we saw, I just knew they were going very, very fast.
Yeah.
But I have no idea how fast. But it was fast enough that the Russians thought it wasn't a satellite. And so that gets into the ballistic missile range, and that's like 8 kilometers per second. That's basically the speed of most ballistic missile reentry vehicles. So it's got to be up in that range for them to like be excited enough to get their strategic rocket forces on high alert.
Yeah.
And I'm cognizant that in the audience are the SVR, the Russian intelligence service. I say hi to everybody. And but they might be more upset about me talking about their system than the U.S. government is about me talking about our systems.
Well, John, if I see a red dot on your head, I'll shout.
Yeah, right.
Don't worry about it. But there was nothing about the way these things were maneuvering, right?
I couldn't tell from that.
No. Okay.
That they were maneuvering any way at all. To me, I thought there was a ballistic. I would say it was a ballistic missile kind of trajectory, but it wasn't a ballistic missile.
All right. So when you got aware of these awkward entries the Russians were detecting, were you and your colleagues thinking this might be UAP?
The word UAP wasn't in the vocabulary at the time.
Or UFO then?
UFO. I didn't correlate it to UFO at the time by name.
Or unknown.
Yeah, it's an unknown, unidentified object.
Which is, yeah.
And so I want to go back to what you said about being able to detect those 5 observables. The deployed system is in Pechora. It's in the northern part of Russia, overlooking the Barents Sea. So yeah. It's in fact very close to you. It's not far away from you. It's further.
Yeah.
And so what the system that I looked at, where I could actually tell that there was something unusual going on, was not the deployed system there at Pechora. It was a experimental radar that they use for atmospheric anomaly research, aerospace anomaly research. And it was called a Neman, Neman-P. The Neman-P radar is highly sophisticated radar. It was built, it was designed in the 70s and it was deployed. And it never became part of any weapon system. It was unusual waveforms, and it was very sophisticated waveforms. And the Russians would test their new experimental reentry vehicles, their warheads, against this radar. And they would simulate what they thought our warheads would be like against this radar and start tracking these reentry vehicles.
Yeah.
But we knew when these launches would occur. And they occurred during the Cold War. They occurred like several times a month. They would test against this radar. But sometimes they would bring this radar up and we could detect it going through its paces, like it was tracking a real object. So you look at and again, there's ways that we do this that gets into an NDA, but I'll say this much. There are ways that we can determine what modes of operation that radar was in. And it was in modes of operation that it was tracking something very fast. It was moving its beam all over the sky very fast and putting track beams over things that, wait a minute, there's no missile launch test. What are they looking at?
Right.
And so I couldn't correlate it to anything other than maybe it's just a test mode, but they're like actually forming tracks from this radar. They're looking at something. It wasn't until later, after the Cold War was over, and after actually I left CIA, that I read this article from a Russian general, Alexeyev, And in this article, he stated that they knew that they were looking at some kind of unusual phenomenon in the sky, like UFO phenomenon. And the Soviet leadership and the Russian leadership knew that. And they instructed these radar stations, like the Niemann P, to try to attract or lure these objects.
Yeah.
And so the modes of operation they were using may have had some success in doing that, because according to this Russian general, they did attract these radars. These radars did attract these objects to the point where they would like hover before, and they can, the humans, the Russians can do like raise their arm, and then the craft would make maneuvers that way, or raise their hand and it'll go up. I mean, it's a fascinating article to read.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't have any evidence of that they actually did that. What I see is the radar data saying, yeah, they attracted something that was moving very fast, and they were shooting track beams at some objects up there.
Sure. So they lured the UAP.
That's the language, I guess, that the Russian general used, that they were lure or attract, and that was a policy of the Russian leadership to do this.
Right.
According to this general, I have to source this general because I have no firsthand information.
Well, if you lure, and if the article turns out to be true, they were communicating.
You would think that, right? Because they were saying that they were doing body, they were moving their bodies, moving their arms, and eliciting a similar reaction from the craft, that the craft would actually move in concert or in synchronicity with what they were doing. So that's some form of communication.
Sure. But this is nothing new. If you take into account, for example, Commander David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, it's not they lured the UAP, but the UAP would play around with them, mirror their movements and stuff, you know. So this reminds me a little bit of that. So this is nothing really new, but what's new to me is that the Russians probably found a way to lure them and maybe communicate with them.
Right.
So how credible do you think this story is?
I don't know. It's just this one general that said that. I mean, I think that's a good area for research.
What was his name again?
Alexeyev. It's one of my slides in my presentation.
Okay, I'm writing it down. Sorry.
Yeah.
Alexeyev, General Alexeyev. Okay, so let's move on to a different topic. So you were working at the science within the CIA, right? The science department.
The Directorate of Science and Technology.
And Technology, yes.
Big directorate with many offices.
Now, are you aware of a man called Jim Semivan?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, are you still there, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. What can you tell about? By the way, Mr. Elizondo wanted me to ask you about Mr. So, what do you think about this person?
So this question came from Lou?
No. Sorry.
Oh.
From a friend of mine who is also working in technology.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mr. Semivan was in the Director of Operations, which later became the National Clandestine Services. So he was more in the human intelligence side of the business line. I didn't know about him until I read the foreword he wrote to one of Tom DeLonge's Secret Machine books, where he identified himself as a CIA officer and talked about the phenomena. And so at that point, I needed to communicate with him because I was working on this presentation. And I did what everybody else does. I looked on YouTube and whatnot and trying to find more information about him. And because I did not want what I'm doing to interfere with whatever he's doing. And so as a professional courtesy, I introduced myself to let him know that I had this presentation. I sent him my bona fides, which he immediately recognized as legitimate, because there's certain things in there that only another CIA officer would know as being real. And so I presented him with my presentation, and I actually said, and I still say to him, that if there's anything I say or do that interferes with anything that he knows that the government is doing, because I think he's more well informed than I am, to please let me know, and I'll stop, because I don't want to interfere with like what they're doing, because I'm sure they're doing some legitimate, serious work on the phenomenon beyond what I know, what I'm doing, because I'm basically coming from my personal experiences, both from my experiencer background and my professional background. And then I had to do all of this open source research to present the presentation, the slide deck that I had, and only added a little bit of seasoning based on what I knew that had occurred about the orbs. And other than that, I sent it all to CIA. They approved it. So that's my relationship with Jim Simivan. I don't work with TTSA or anything like that.
No. Thank you for that. So let's go. You were just talking about your personal experience. Now, could you? I know you've talked about this before, but when did this occur, and what was your age?
My personal experiences started when I was very young. I came to the U.S. at age 5, and at age 5, I remember seeing something. I was living with my aunt and uncle in Fort Lee, Virginia, Lee, Fort Lee, Virginia. And I saw some silvery craft in the distance over the treetops. I pointed it out to my playmates, and they couldn't see it. They didn't see it. They didn't see anything. So what's over there? It was like a large, round, kind of not round that way, but more of like an oblong shape craft.
Oval?
Oval, but more elliptical oval, not a saucer,
right?
A little fatter, and it was silver, and I could see it. It was hovering above the treetops, and I saw it, and they couldn't see it, and then it moved off. So that was my very first experience. A little older now, I'm like 6 or 7 years old, and that's when I described being led to this house for a medical examination by a woman who was not my mother and a doctor and nurse. I described that extensively. Yeah. And then, I had the experiences of being taken. I planted the sunflower seeds and being taken aboard a craft and being held in the arms of some being that I did not get a good look at, and being laid on a table or some examining table. And so those are the major experiences. There's several others that I can go through. They're very similar to what other people have experienced, such as being night paralysis or sleep paralysis and having a beam in the room looking at you and communicating with you.
I can shake your hand, sir. I've had it for a year straight.
Yeah. Those type of experiences are ongoing.
Yeah. So this is a question I've talked about with multiple people. Is usually when people experience a sighting or there's a sighting or some kind of encounter, there's something, let's say, impactful happening in their lives at the moment. Not all of them, of course, but for some reason, everybody goes through something when they have their experience. Some personal hardship or so you just said you came to the United States at the time. Where were you from?
Yokohama, Japan. That's my birthplace, and that's where I lived with my parents.
But your parents are American, right?
No, my mother's Japanese. My father's American.
Okay, all right. So I thought they were military people living in Japan, but my bad.
Not my mother. No, my father was a Department of the Army civilian. He was not in the military. He was a civil servant in the Army working for the Department of Defense.
Right. So these experiences, when you went to work with the CIA,
Hmm.
I assume they do a very extensive and intensive screening of anyone who gets to work for the CIA.
Hmm.
Um, uh, did you ever mention these experiences?
And not during my first reinvestigation, my first investigation, rather, my first investigation um, was primarily it was called a full scope poly. A
Right.
full scope means that they get into every intimate detail of your life. Primarily, they want to know, is there anything in your background, anything that you are embarrassed that might be found that can be used as blackmail against you by a foreign intelligence service? Or is there a foreign intelligence service already in contact with you? And that's the reason why you're applying for employment. So those are the questions they were primarily interested in. So it's a counterintelligence type of uh, investigation into your background. They do what's known as the national agency check. They want to know if I've ever been a felon, if I've ever been convicted of a felony, if I served time in prison. They actually go into your finances, your entire financial history, to see if you have a history of being maybe gambling debts or having lack of money, because then lack of money can be used as an enticement to spy against the United States for a foreign government. So those are the kind of things that they talk about, not necessarily like UFOs.
Right.
So that didn't really come up at all. It didn't come up until my reinvestigation, when they asked me, what are your hobbies? And so I go to UFO conferences, and I'm interested in UFO research, and this is
now,
like coast
now
to coast.
you are a very highly acclaimed retired CIA officer.
I was.
I Well, I saw your award
Oh
at
yeah,
the
yeah,
Lewis and
I mean,
Mies.
yeah, yeah. There are very levels of awards, but thank you very
But
much for saying that. I just did my
on,
time.
on the
I just did
record.
my time. Yeah.
Um, so, sir, look, I see you were you had a very successful career within the
Uh-huh.
organization. But during your time at the CIA, have they ever referred you for a psych evaluation, which I think is
Every time,
protocol?
every time you go overseas for any reason, before you go and after you come back, you always go through that type of evaluation
Right.
to see what your health and well-being is about. It includes both medical and psychological examinations. So those have occurred.
And when is it when they, for example, get concerned and they suspend your security clearing? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I never had my security clearances ever withheld whatsoever. I maintained
That's great.
TSSCI all the way through for the 25 years. Uh, and so I was granted security clearance actually prior to I showed up, because I passed through the poly, I passed through their investigation process. And so they granted me the clearance. And then they called me up and said, congratulations, pick a date you want to show up for work. And so I picked a date, which was June 18, 1984. And then on September 30, 2009, I left the door. And before I left, I got read out of everything. So at that point, they said, as of September 30, 2009, at midnight, you are no longer a cleared employee of the CIA. So thank you very much. Had a lovely time. See you guys later. I was
Yeah,
gone.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, but during your time, right?
yeah,
You just told me at some point you could elaborate on your hobbies, right?
yeah.
Um, is there did that did it ever happen that um, you know colleagues or maybe they started working against you or something? People who were like
Absolutely not. That doesn't happen. CIA is a very collegial atmosphere. It's like a college campus, and we almost design like a college campus, because a lot of the offices in the CIA translate to departments, academic departments, like the Department of History, Department of this or that, the electrical engineering department, mechanical engineering department, physics. It's like a collegial atmosphere. It was designed that way. And I felt that it was having interfaced with my colleagues, my counterparts in the Defense Department side. I was glad I wasn't a Defense Department employee, because I felt they
Yeah.
were like very narrowly restricted in what they can do. And whereas our environment was very open. It's very, I mean, by gosh, we have a koi pond outside headquarters right there. You can sit in front of benches and meditate. We have meditation gardens all over the place, little benches where you can find time for yourself to just sit and just meditate. I mean, that's the kind of place it is. I thought it was completely open like that and nothing restrictive. And so we don't play games against each other like that. I mean, that
Well,
doesn't happen.
I can imagine that the things you encounter that are, of course, usually very classified and secretive are sometimes stranger than fiction. So I guess you have to have an open mind towards all of your colleagues, because you're basically all in the same boat and doing the same work, and you can't work against each other unless there's something very bad going on. So
Yeah. I don't know what bad could be going on that we would like pit ourselves against each other. I mean, I think that's fiction more than anything.
well, look, I'm thinking spy stories, like maybe someone is actually,
You know what? Yeah. The key operating word you just said was story.
Yes.
So, it doesn't happen that way at all.
No.
In fact, people are surprised when they come to CIA, even students. We have college students who work for us part of the time, maybe a semester. We pay for their entire college experience. We clear them to top secret SCI. We clear them to every compartment they need to work in my office. They got, and they're just students. They're like 19 years old, and they have no commitment to continue working for us whatsoever, unless unless they are part of a student program where we pay for their education, and then there's some commitment for that payment of education. So they have to work so many years afterwards, and then they're free to like go anywhere they want to. And so
Sure.
it's that type of environment. So it's like this. The Hollywood did a terrible job, and it's nothing like that. It's
Yeah.
totally nothing like that.
I'm sorry, I had to ask. By the way, I'm just a totally oblivious guy from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. But if you don't ask the question,
Yeah.
yeah. So let me ask you. I saw your interview on the UFO podcast with
Yeah.
Martin,
Yeah.
which was amazing, by the way. Congratulations to you and Martin, actually. I enjoyed that. But you were elaborating on the hybrid theory. And
Yes.
yes, I have some questions.
Okay.
This is something that is very fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some talk about the DNA timeline. So I heard, or I read, DNA was discovered in the 50s, right? But then I saw the interview because I was immediately thinking about the Roswell story. The DNA was recovered from allegedly alien bodies.
You're talking about generic DNA or just DNA from the alien bodies? Because DNA was discovered in the 1800s, mid 1800s.
Yeah. So what's the difference for an idiot like me? So,
well, I'm an idiot too, because I'm not a biologist. I mean, I can't describe DNA to you, but let me tell you the story. The background of the story is that I was invited to this one-day symposium by an officer I knew who was more involved in this than I was.
Sure, yeah.
And so he said, there's an interesting symposium. Why don't you come along? Okay. And I didn't know what it was about. So they said, yeah, it's unclassified. We're going to meet in this hotel in Tyson's Corner.
Do you
just go up to the second floor and we'll go to this.
Do you remember the name of the college?
Absolutely, but I can't say. You know why? You know why?
Sorry.
Intelligence Identities Protection Act. You cannot reveal the name of CIA officer who hasn't revealed himself. So I can say Jim Semivan all I want to, because
Yeah.
he's associated with CIA. I
Right.
can say that I'm associated with CIA because I publicly stated on my own that I
Yeah.
was CIA, but he has not. So I don't know what his relationship to CIA was at the time. Not all of us are overt. That is, we have no cover.
Are you
Uh,
still in touch with that man?
no, I would love to be in touch with him. I
Mhm.
would love to be in touch with him because then, hindsight, I would like to ask him questions. But he might have been undercover. I don't know what his status was, so I can't reveal. I don't know if he still works there. And if
Yeah.
he still works there undercover, I can't reveal his name.
Yeah.
And
So
so
this was, sorry.
okay, so I saw another officer there that I knew, a very senior officer as well, that I knew
Yeah.
by sight, and he knew me. So there's two officers that knew me personally by sight that I've interacted with personally. They were there. And then when the meeting started, it was introduced by an extremely senior officer introducing another senior officer. And the other senior officer was the one that talked about the McMinnville UFO being a real one, and also talked about the fact of that the CIA has been interested in the alien DNA since the
Yes.
end of World War II.
Sorry, I missed the UFO. Which UFO was it?
That McMinnville, Oregon UFO of
McMinnville.
1950, McMinnville, Oregon. Yeah, 1950. It's a
Yeah.
couple called the Trents, TRENTS, and they had a farm and they photographed this UFO. They took
I
a
know.
couple of photographs.
Yeah, I saw the photographs on the interview you did on with Martin. It's a pretty known photograph actually.
Yeah,
But it's very fascinating. They actually acknowledged it to be real.
yep. That's a real one.
Wow.
That's a real one.
So is this the meeting that was in like 2001?
I think it's 2001 because of the senior officer that actually sponsored the meeting and invited the other officer to speak to us. And so
Right.
I looked at that senior officer's tenure at CIA and said he started at this point in that office. And so I knew it was before 9/11, definitely,
Sure.
because 9/11 was not a big deal. And at that time, there was no 9/11, and counterterrorism wasn't the major focus of CIA at that time. After
Yeah.
9/11, everything went to counterterrorism. Like everything went to counterterrorism. We dropped a lot of other business to
Yeah.
do the counterterrorism issue, and that didn't occur then. And it was just after Y2K, year 2000,
Right.
because I knew like, oh, finally we got Y2K out of the way. And so I that's why I placed it at 2001. Again, there was I did not keep the sign-in sheet with everyone's names handwritten, including mine, and our telephone address, telephone numbers, and the office we worked in. I think that was all in there. And I did not keep the agenda. It was all unclassified. They just handed it out. I could have in fact, I took it home and I brought it back to work the next day because I was unclassified.
Yeah. So this meeting, what was the occasion? What was exactly being presented or talked about?
I don't know if there was a title to it. It's just one day symposium. I don't know. I don't remember the title of it. It had.
But was it about UFO?
I didn't. Well, it eventually became about UFOs, but when I
Right.
was invited, I had no idea what it was about. But there were three topics that they wanted to cover, and one was the UFO, the other was hybrid alien DNA, and the third was this this revolution in personal information technology that was going to happen throughout the world. And so they were looking at the future, like what would the future be 10 years from now, 20 years from now?
Yeah. So the reason you can talk about this, I understand, is because there was no security ticket at all.
I didn't have to wear my badge. There's nothing to badge into. There's no security officer outside on a desk checking everyone's credentials. I just walked in and sat down. And I had my cell phone with me. It was, I think it was back then, it was a Motorola StarTAC, you know, one of those clamshell, real thin ones. And Usually, if it's a skiff, it won't be in a hotel, and you can't take your
Yeah.
cell phone, and you're gonna have your credentials checked. Your badge will be checked, and there will be a security
So
officer outside, and none of that happened. So, the,
if this were, it sounds very sloppy to me. If this, the
or was it intended for us to? Were the people there intended to hear this at some
that's what
level?
I was thinking. Yeah, because was this like tactical? Was this, like, let's say, how do you say this in English? I lost the word. Staged.
You know what? I'm not a skeptic or a debunker, but I do believe that you have to adopt all points of view.
Right.
And I say I hold things, I embrace widely, and so that could be it too. I
Yeah.
don't discount that. It's just that there are CI officers there
Yeah.
in present. There were academics there present. My impression is these academics were working this issue before. I don't know for a fact. I don't remember anybody there that I recognized. I know who wasn't there. Ronald Pandolfi was not there at that meeting because I would have known who he was. So Ronald
So
S. Pandolfi, Dr. Pandolfi was not there at the meeting on UFOs.
and who
And
is this man?
Mr. Pandolfi, Dr. Pandolfi, rather, I'm sorry, Ron. Dr. Pandolfi was regarded as someone as part of this aviary group. They're all named after different birds. And this aviary group were individuals in various parts of the government that were involved in the UFO issue. And they
Right.
named themselves after birds. And I believe he's known as the Pelican. And there are
Okay.
other officers known by different other names. And they met together. I don't know if there was a formal group or an informal group, but there was something called the aviary with other people in it. One individual, I think it was Dr. Bruce Maccabee.
Okay.
He was a
Yeah.
member of that. And so he wasn't there. I don't think he was there because everyone knew who Ron Pandolfi was, at least in my area of
But what was
knowledge.
he somehow important for the topic or something? Or
Oh, he should have been. I mean, if it's about UFOs, it's said that he was ascribed with this title of being in charge of the so-called quote unquote weird desk at CIA. And
the
part of
weird
that
desk?
weird desk at CIA was about UFOs.
Okay.
And so there's a title ascribed to him on the internet as being the deputy director or director of science division of science. That's all bogus. There's no such position like that. But
Yeah.
he did have a position as a very brilliant scientist at CIA. I mean, his brilliance was well known. I mean,
Okay.
he was a smart guy at CIA.
Right.
And I dealt with him one-on-one in a smaller meeting outside of the UFO context, where I actually dealt with him one-on-one later, about in 2005 or no, about 2007 or 2008. That I actually dealt
So
with him.
he should have been there, and later
Well,
you
if
dealt.
he's part of the aviary, and the aviary is so-called this UFO elite government officers and the UFO sphere within
Right.
government. If it's this symposium is about UFOs, I would expect him to be there, but I did
Okay.
not see him there.
Okay. And what does that say to you?
I don't know.
Uh,
I don't know what it says, but the people who were there, knowing who they are, it made sense why they were there. The other CIA officers, why they were there.
yes.
It made a lot of sense to me. Why I was there, I don't know. It's just that it was well known to the Office of Security that I was very much interested in UFOs,
Yeah.
because I declared that was my hobby, and they dutifully wrote it down at my reinvestigation that this guy was interested in UFOs. And he goes to UFO conferences, and he loves listening to Coast AM. So all that's in there. So it's part of my security profile.
Right.
So whether that led me to be invited, I don't know.
So, do you feel that? Let's elaborate a little bit on the content of the symposium at the
Hmm.
time. So we were talking about hybrid
Hmm.
DNA, yeah, about hybrids and
Hmm.
DNA. Um, what and this was the first time you ever heard about this or this
Oh,
information,
no,
or
no, no, no. It's preloaded in my head because, like I said, that whole hybrid issue was part of ufology. The um, When I
oh,
was interested in UFOs, I mean, that was part of what we know. That was one of the main theories that was in ufology. So,
right,
no, it wasn't
okay,
unusual to me. This isn't the first time I heard it. What surprised me was that somebody official said it.
yeah, um, okay. But okay, so now basically, through your interest in ufology, you knew about hybrid DNA. Now you see your colleagues in this symposium, people
Yep.
you know, you feel very, probably very at home, uh, and this information starts going. Um, Now, what I can imagine you as an enthusiast must have dove right in and maybe try to find out about how this DNA was recovered. And you've talked about this before, but for some reason, it all leads to Roswell. Now, you dove in there in that topic. Maybe you can once more tell your idea of if this could be true, and if true, what would be the scenario we are looking at?
Well, again, I was trying to connect the dots in my own mind.
Sure.
I was trying to make sense of the things I
Oh,
perfect.
sorry.
Okay, the things I learned professionally, the things I experienced personally. I was trying to connect the dots in my own mind, and so um, when I look back, when the key for me was two things. First of all, let me make clear that they did not present any evidence, no evidence of what they told us. So they didn't show us craft. They didn't show us bodies. I didn't see that come up at all. It was
No
just
pictures?
no pictures. The only pictures we saw were the McMinnville UFO.
Sure. Yeah.
And so they didn't talk about um, the evidence at all. They didn't present any evidence. But because of who this person was and the office that sponsored this symposium, I have
Yeah.
to hold that highly as being authentic because they would not lie to another CIA officers. We don't lie to each other. That's part of our culture within
Right.
CIA. Okay,
Hmm.
so they just stated as a matter of fact. And the two things that interested me was it went back. He said that our interest in alien DNA goes back to just after World War II. Okay, that's one point. The second point is we know that certain familial lines, certain families have enhanced alien DNA. That's point
What
number
does that
two.
mean? What does that mean, enhanced?
I think the way they were saying is if you accept the first point that there's alien DNA in the human genome,
Right.
that certain humans have an
More.
enhancement to the alien DNA. So
So
that's
more.
more or different. I don't
Right.
know if it's more. I
Or
would say,
evolved.
yeah, or highly evolved maybe, or somehow different. I don't know. But the third thing, there are three things. The third thing was, and that certain familial lines, and we did some investigation in certain parts of the country.
Okay.
And they mentioned Northeast United States.
Now,
Those are the three
now,
things.
now, if you talk about certain high-profile families who have these enhanced hybrid alien DNA,
Yeah.
or are we talking about like yeah, but just to get into the conspiracy theory kind of things, like like conspiracists would say, like people who run the world, the Rothschilds or something, or something like that,
Yeah,
or
I had to conjecture that. I conjecture that if you look back at history, there's this obsession with like certain families keeping their blood pure,
Right.
so-called the blue bloods. Where did that come from? And there's also
Yeah.
certain families where priesthood or priestesshood go from generation to generation to generation.
Oh, I'm one of those. I'm a
Oh,
Jewish Kohen. So
there you go.
my paternal lineage is a priestly caste that goes right back to Aaron. Not really religious, but I am that.
And you're getting visitations. That's interesting.
Well, I did have the sleep paralysis, so I
Uh-huh.
felt visited definitely.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, you're going back to history and you're looking at I read Zachariah Sitchin and his works on the Anunnaki. So I
Oh,
plowed through all of those books. So I had some background in that already coming with it. So for me, it just validated things I already knew. So it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I knew this all along. Now he's saying it. Now I know that what I've read was, I can like now it's embraced widely, but now I can hold that a little bit more tightly.
right.
And so for me, that's how I approached it. And that's the difference it made for me in terms of my understanding of the phenomenon.
All right. Now, um, let's elaborate a little bit on this because I think it's damn interesting. So, if we would just go with the theories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not saying it's actually true, but if we go with the theories, so it's pretty clear something happened at Roswell. Something was recovered.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been an alien disk. It might have been some debris.
Mm-hmm.
What was it called? A weather balloon or something? The official statement was a weather balloon, I think. Now, no, you're okay. Why are you shaking your head, sir?
I'm shaking my head because I have to believe that a weather balloon would not have prompted an experienced Army Air Force officer who worked the intelligence side of that base to say this is a craft. I think
Yeah.
the military actually called it as they saw it, that the Roswell Army Air Force Base recovered a flying saucer, as
Yeah.
was stated in the press. And so everything leading up to the discovery and recovery kind of fit what they said. The story changed when higher echelons in the government and the military then came down and said, oh, you didn't see that. You saw something
Right.
else. And so the eyewitnesses that were there, I mean, I wasn't there to eyewitness it, but the people who saw it claimed that this is correct. This is what we saw. And so I have to go with that eyewitness testimony
Yeah.
as the evidence. So that's why I say I discount the weather balloon. I discount Project Mogul and all that other stuff.
Yeah, there's more and more documents coming out about the Roswell incident. I think so. Through your work, have you ever saw any documents, or through your personal investigation, did you ever encounter any documents on that crash?
No, I have not. Chase Brandon, who wrote the book Cryptos Conundrums, stated or claimed that he saw the files in a box labeled Roswell in the Historical Intelligence Collection. And the Historical Intelligence Collection is where I actually found the MK Ultra and the remote viewing documents. So that gives me credence that he actually identified the actual where you would find something like that. It is like a lot of it is like boxes. I mean, it's like literally boxes, and sometimes they're filed and sometimes they're not filed. And back when the library was on the ground floor of headquarters building, you can go in there and go even below that level, and there are all these documents everywhere. I mean, there's just like lining the shelves. And so there's information in there that he claims he found. So I have to
Yeah.
go with what he says.
And you think he's a credible person?
Yeah, I met him once. And he's
Okay.
well known in the building. I mean, he is extremely well known in the building.
Right.
And even the director of Central Intelligence, Robert Gates, he didn't say exactly, oh, he's full of BS. I mean, he said, I respect him and I can't say one way or the other, about Chase. He doesn't want to say anything bad about Chase. He respects Chase. So he doesn't want to lend any credence to what he said. He didn't want to validate it.
Yeah.
But he stood up for his reputation. And so any CIA officer who worked the period I worked would know him as being a person of high integrity.
Right. Okay. So yeah, there's no reason to question
Mm-mm.
his findings. Okay, I get it.
I would love to find him, though. I would love to. He needs to come out. I mean, I've been looking for him.
Well,
yeah,
I know his name now. I'm gonna
Chase Brandon. Yeah,
I'm gonna chase Chase now.
yeah, you should. I mean, I would think go through his publisher. I mean, the last time I heard of Chase was, he had a publisher for his book, so the publisher might know where he's at. I don't know.
All right, thank you, sir. I take the hint. So let's go on, elaborate a little bit more, because now we have to come to, okay, so if there's alien DNA, it had to be recovered, and it's most probable it would have been allegedly the 2 or 3 alien bodies that were recovered at Roswell, right?
That's my theory. Yeah.
Well, if it were true, it's my theory too, because
I'm going to assume that that's what happened because of what they told me. I mean, how would they recover alien DNA after World War II? That's the first question I ask myself. If there was alien DNA after World War II, where would it come from?
Right.
It's like with bang, Roswell.
Yeah, you did talk about someone told you. Were these colleagues?
About the alien DNA?
Or was it the alien
He was
DNA?
These high-level officials, higher than my pay grade, who told me that. Who told us all of that.
Okay. And that was at the
hotel room.
The hotel room, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hotel conference room, yes.
Hotel conference room. Okay, so one more question about that, because this is too interesting. You said there was no security ticket there. Were there any phones recording, or is there any chance there is something, even audio, recorded on that information?
I didn't. My phone was in my pocket. I did not record anything. Whether someone else did, they may have.
I need that guest list.
Yeah, I need the guest list too. So I can tell you this, Max, that I hesitated in putting out that slide 54. I was going to hold it back, but I said, no, I don't want to hold anything back. I am putting out what I call a personal speculation based on information I received.
Sure, yeah.
So the bullets are what people have trouble with, but those bullets kind of coincide with the way when I researched like reptilians on Earth and their interactions with humans, and looking at like some of the history that we have, this ancient history, looking at Sitchin and so forth. When I put it all together, that's what came out in my mind. So I put those bullets in to explain what might be going on, because I also said to myself, why is it such a secret? Why would a spacecraft from another planet with beings from another planet all of a sudden be a national security issue, even after the context of the Cold War?
Right.
Russia fell, and we don't want the Russians to. Why are you keeping it secret? I'm feeling that, coming forward, we talked about the legislation. I've got a feeling that somewhere along the line, if you want to address the UAPs of today, you have to go back to the UFOs of yesteryear. They need to come clean on exactly what was recovered at Roswell. And don't give me the BS about a weather balloon or Project Mogul. Tell us exactly what happened, because you know from the FOIA that there was a whole history of investigating these UFOs. They weren't investigating weather balloons. They were investigating craft. And you can actually read that various government officials stated that, you know, UFOs, we're looking at it. We're looking at it. We're looking at it. We need to suppress it. We need to, you know, divert the interest in it. We need to let people know it's something else and so forth. And I'll go back to that symposium, one-day symposium. The officer who briefed us said, we knew about the UFOs. And when we started the U2 program at Station D, as in Delta, which is what we called it. Area 51 was a Atomic Energy Commission name, but Station D, when we start flying to U2s, our U2s are silver. The U2s we experimented with were silver. The A-12 Oxcart was silver.
Yeah, and when deployed, they were painted black, right?
When they were deployed overseas,
yeah,
they were painted black. But when we were flying them out of what you guys know as Area 51, they were silver. And they said, we knew about the UFOs, and we didn't care that they spotted our U2 because we're hoping they thought it was UFOs. Exactly. Never did he say that we were telling people that you know, that we're not saying that U2s were UFOs. We're saying we don't care if you think that way. Right. So we don't have to hide it. We can hide this in plain sight and do all of our flight tests in plain sight, because people look up in the sky and see a UFO. That's fine. Having said that, we're able to go back and matrix all of the flights out of Area 51, all the flights and where these craft flew, and then correlate it to actual sightings of people on the ground, and say, okay, these people saw our U2. But then there were outliers that people saw other things when we weren't flying the U2, and they saw these. And that's when he said, you know, the other outliers are actual actual UFOs. They're actual UFOs. And that was in the classified part of a report that was distributed internally.
Yeah.
That looked at the agency's study of UFOs from 1947 to 1990. It was in the classified part of it. That's what wasn't released to the public. What you read, if you you don't even need to FOIA, it's released. If you read it, it won't have that information in there.
Do you think those U2s might contain technology that could have been ET?
Well, they were using like conventional jet engines. They were very good jet engines. They could fly very fast. I would say if there's anything related to anything ET or UFO, would be the material science in that U2, the material science, because the flight controls are very conventional. The propulsion was very conventional.
Because you said they were silver. Because you said they were silvery, like
they're silver.
Mercury kind of a color.
I don't know. I don't know if Mercury, but I heard they were silvery. Yeah,
silvery. Okay. Yeah. So okay, that reminds me of some alien UAP sightings, right? The silver color or something, but thought maybe it was like the outer material that could have been maybe extracted from something that was recovered, but that's my I'm just my mouth is talking, I'm saying things, but
well, I mean, you can see the U2 in museums. I mean, some of the early U2s are in the various air and space museums, so you can go up there and look at them. I don't think there's anything exotic about their materials, not in the U2.
So let's rewind a little bit about the DNA, the hybrid thing. So if there would be an alien human genome, does that correlate with what you've been told? That it's something. Was it is this like this human alien hybrid something after 1947, or do you think it was from
Oh,
maybe it could be our sheer existence, from the beginning of humankind or something?
you can't discount that. I mean, you have to embrace that as well. That could very well be. Um,
Yeah,
but you go back to again, you go back to many religious texts. There seems to be some kind of divine um, intervention in our creation, and so there's
right.
many allegories about how we were created. And
Yeah,
it didn't say we evolved from primates. It said, "Let us make man in our image," quoting from Genesis. So again, there's some extraterrestrial being, God, who's not from Earth. He's in heaven, right? Where's heaven? Not on Earth. Okay, so
right.
automatically God is like, in a broader sense, extraterrestrial because he's not from Earth.
Yeah,
But he was interested in the creation of the earth and the beings on the earth. So let us make man in our own image. Now, do you actually believe that he spat on some mud, mixed it up, and mixed it up, and out came human? And he took a
no,
rib out of that and made woman? I mean,
yeah,
it's an allegory. But going past the allegory, there was some divine intervention in the creation of humans, that we have
sure.
some divine spark within us. And
Mhm.
so, even from that standpoint, you have to accept the extraterrestrial hypothesis on at least our creation, that we didn't create ourselves, but it seems that every religious text seems to allude to the fact that we were created by
Yeah,
others. So, I bring that into the mix as well.
sure, sure. It reminds me of a movie, a very well-known movie, of course, Men in Black. Uh, there's one scene where I think you have Will Smith and his older
Yeah.
colleague, and there's this locker room, I think, at Grand Central Station, New York, or something, right?
Hmm.
Like a public locker. And when he opens the locker, there's like an a minuscule alien civilization, and because his name is Jay in the movie, Tommy Lee Jones, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he opens the locker, they think he's God because he's the only one who opens the locker now and then, and they say, "All hail Jay!" Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that might be our Bible, that might be our Quran, Torah, etc. Right? Well, God might be Jay, or that's the way we look at it,
Right.
because we just don't know.
Right.
We could be still a very primitive life form,
Hmm.
hybrid or something.
Yeah. And fun fact: Tommy Lee Jones's cousin is Chase Braden, who wrote Crypto's Conundrum.
No, stop
Yes.
it. No,
Yes.
stop it. This
And
cat. This is.
what did Chase Brandon do? He helped Hollywood, because he was the entertainment liaison toward the end of his career. He helped Hollywood with their scripts and
No. Okay. So no,
how
no, no, no,
those
no.
scripts are written.
Look. Okay. From what year did he do that? Was he involved with the Spielberg thing, with the Third Encounters and?
I think that was before his time when he was doing that.
Oh,
But
okay.
I would think that CIA would be interested in how they are portrayed in movies. And at some
Right.
point throughout CIA's history, and even the Department of Defense, that there are entertainment liaisons who work with Hollywood. It still exists today. There are people who work with Hollywood
Yeah.
and helping them with their scripts, especially if they want to film inside the headquarters building, or
Mhm.
they are not allowed to show the headquarters building, overfly it for their movie unless they get CIA's permission. Of course, you can like use Google Earth or whatever. I mean, but if you want to get really good close-ups, or even scenes from actual inside the building, you have to go through CIA Public Affairs Office. Chase Brandon worked for the Public Affairs Office. He worked with Hollywood. He had Hollywood connections through his cousin, Tommy Lee Jones, and he was instrumental in a lot of depictions by Hollywood of the CIA. So
So
Tommy Lee Jones was a first cousin, or I think he was a first cousin, but he was a cousin. And There's the Men in Black.
To my audience, Google that shit right now.
Yeah.
But that if that were true, that means like he would be, and this is something you see actually a lot, like a lot of things that turned up in 80s, 90s sci-fi movies actually
Yeah.
are very close to what we're actually encountering right now. So as we say in Holland, where there's smoke, there must be fire.
Yes.
So that's very interesting. So hold on, I'm gonna go on to elaborate a little bit more on this. So you were talking about people who were sharing this information with you, right? You were waiting on the moment they would allow you to share their names.
I have to go back to CIA, to the pre-classification review board, and get that permission. I'm doing it in conjunction with getting my own medical records, because I think my medical records might be interesting. I don't know, but
Why?
I future
John?
future.
John. Okay. So a sneak peek, little spoiler. Are you a hybrid?
I think we're all hybrids. I think you're a hybrid, Max.
I
You
am.
might be a better hybrid than I am. I don't know.
No. But is there something you could maybe a hint?
Certain people tend to have experiences more than other people.
Right.
I don't know why that is. And so a lot of researchers have looked into the experiencer aspect of the phenomenon, and they could probably better describe it than I can. But I have to believe that those who have these experiences earlier in life, from childhood, and many experiences go back to like very young age, like age 4, 5, 6, or that's kind of common to us.
Yeah, I like to
And
believe
so-
I'm one of those actually.
Mhm. So we might have had some kind of extra information given to us, whether we remember it or not.
Like
that
DNA
caused-
memory?
Well, it could be like a memory that all of a sudden, for some
That's a
reason.
real thing, John. That's a real thing,
Oh.
DNA memory. That
Oh.
there's a science behind that.
Okay.
For example, people who have grandparents or ancestors who, for
Mhm.
example, were very traumatized,
Mhm.
that trauma is actually transferred through your DNA.
Interesting. Mhm.
That's real.
That's real. So, okay, let's bring it up to the UAP phenomenon, the whole phenomenon. Maybe there was a history of certain families having this encounter with these beings, and it just followed generation to generation to generation.
Yeah.
And that we might be like the most current generation having this happen to us. And so that's why we're so interested. We almost like some folks are obsessed with like this topic.
Have you
And
ever
why
heard
is that?
about? Have you ever heard about indigo children?
I've heard of star seeds. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
Star seeds, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that could be the reason why that we have these experiences and why we're so interested in this entire phenomenon. Now, going back, I think they found something in me during an examination when they had to examine me in a certain way, and I'm not ready to share the entire story yet.
But can I ask you just one question?
Yeah.
Because of your experiences, is that why they were investigating you? Because they thought this is something really to look at, or
no? No, it was more of a mundane situation than that. Basically, I needed to get medical service because I had an accident at work. And through the examination of me by the Office of Medical Services, by CIA doctors, I think they found something in me that was of interest to them.
Ah,
And I want to know what they found. And I want to see if they'll release these medical records to me.
okay, so
And
John,
mhm,
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask this because something um, I found out just a couple of weeks ago.
mhm.
To elaborate on um, alien DNA hybrids,
Mhm.
um, there's also something called alien implants, and
Oh,
now you were talking about your abduction when you were a child.
mhm.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think it might be that, or am I wrong?
I now you know why I want those records.
Yeah,
Yeah, and if it's my personal medical records, it should come to me unredacted, right?
yeah,
Because it's me. I want to
yeah.
see if there are any notes that these doctors would put in my record. I have not
But
seen
you,
my record, and I want to
but
see, did they find something inside of me through this examination
yeah,
that
you
was of
just said
interest to
there
them?
was something that wasn't that was alien to them.
They saw something that they took from me. I don't know what. I don't know what they did
Hmm.
from a medical standpoint, other than the fact that they got me back on my feet and I could return to work.
Were you
But
operated on?
I was never operated on by anybody.
Okay,
Not even like I still have my tonsils and never broke a bone or anything. I mean, I've had no surgery whatsoever.
all right, okay. So X-rays, blood tests, biopsies, or
Yeah, they took X-rays of me. I want to see the X-rays. I want to see everything of that
yeah,
encounter I had with the Office of Medical Services. To
sure.
me, that I think that was personally interesting to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there a reason, or was there something in the way they reacted to the results that you thought there's something that's of interest to them?
yeah. Oh, yeah. When the first doctor saw me, then he called over a colleague and saw the same thing. And you know how doctors are when they look at you, and then, oh, that's interesting, and then, they go on a sidebar and they talk amongst themselves,
Right.
and you hear them talking to go back and, you know, that kind
You
of
have to
thing.
you have to see this, something like that.
Exactly. I want to know. I don't know. I've never seen my medical records that CIA has on me, and I want those
Yeah.
records.
Man, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Um, so let me see. Um, just to philosophize a little bit about hybrids. If it were true, we could be like a maybe a cross between earthly life and an alien civilization, maybe as an experiment, see what happens, and if we elaborate on that. And now, for the last, say, 100 years, a lot is going on, right? So this is
Mhm.
something I always think about: is why is it that since the last 100 years we started flying, driving cars, having all this technology, the internet, um, medical knowledge, we can cure diseases that were uncurable for thousands and thousands of years.
Mhm.
What happened? What is going on? Well, why are we so blessed to be in this transitional era of the evolution of humankind? Because I think this is a key moment in the evolvement of human beings, I think.
Mhm.
So there's definitely something going on, and I do think like the UAP activity has something to do with it.
Mhm.
um, so what are your personal thoughts on this era we are living in?
Exactly. I think we're being prepared for like this with the technology we have. It's almost like a crossroads. This technology is wonderful. It can really help humanity. It can help ease our lives and make our lives much better.
Mhm.
But it also can destroy humanity because we have now the capability of destroying it. So this technology can be used both ways. and we're at like you said, a crossroads. And for me, it's almost like I said before in other interviews, for me, it's the message. And the message is you have the means to destroy yourselves, but don't do it. That's the message, that there are things you need to do that will save the planet, and you need to stop things that will hurt the planet. And it's your choice. We give you the choice, but we're here to help you. Right. And if they know that there's some catastrophe that's occurring in the future and they want to help us, if the government knows, I don't know. If the government knows and they're in some communication with these beings, and that's a tantalizing thing to think about, because sometimes Lou teases, we know who's driving that craft and we know who's driving that craft, but we don't know who's driving those. I mean, he says that. I mean, no one's ever asked him, okay, Lou, who are these guys? You know, sometimes we can see who's inside we saw who's inside. Okay, what are they? No one follows up with the right questions. You know, when he talks about 70,000 years ago, there may have been a enhancement or an intervention in our DNA. He said that. But no one knows, how do you know, Lou? Who told you? I mean, you're asking me. I'm the least guy that knows. I mean, I'm trying to make sense of it myself, and I'm just sharing what I know. But maybe if the government knows about something that's happening, maybe the government knows that in order to prevent something from happening, they need the help of these beings. And in order to get help from these beings, they need to reveal the fact that, yes, there are these beings. Mm-hmm. And so you have an acceleration of all this information coming out, leading to that occurrence of getting help from the beings, because we're at a crossroads in the future of humanity. Yeah. That kind of sinks in with synchronicity with various experiencers who say the same thing, with various channelers saying the same thing, that they feel like something is going to happen like real soon now. Some people put dates on it. I don't like putting dates on things, but just that something might happen and we need their help. In order to get their help, we need to say, okay, they're here and we know they're here and they're here to help. And maybe that's why it accelerated. And for me personally, that's what's happening.
Yeah. So if this is happening, that would explain a lot of the activity, right? Since the 40s. Your personal belief is there were these alien bodies found, and they were investigating that particular DNA, that alien DNA, and saw a lot of similarities with human DNA, right? That's the alleged story. The scientists, for some reason, took from that. Now, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because in your other interview, you said, the Germans were very much experienced.
Yes.
Investigating because it's a bad thing because I'm Jewish, but they were doing the race thing, right? Like the investigation of different DNA on human races, I guess, or something.
Right. And I have to go back to history on that. And so I'm not a historian, but, I read books. I do my own research. And so I came across this, an interview organization in the Nazi Party. And these were people who went out all over the world. Right. They said Antarctica, they said like Tibet, and they're looking for evidence of the Aryan race. And they felt like the Aryan race was descended from the Atlanteans of old. And before the Nazi Party came into being as a political party, there were various societies like the Thule Society in Germany that had that as a common theme, that the German people or certain peoples were descended from Atlanteans, and there might still be here, or we might be some associated with these advanced races, and the Germans wanted to find them.
Yeah, so Atlantis is a lost continent, right? Or the mythical lost
continent. Yeah. But if you look at So if you look at some of the myths and legends as history and just play that scenario in your mind and try to make those myths and legends kind of fit what we're seeing today, sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. But when it makes sense, I think it's very compelling, because I'm not an archaeologist and I'm not an anthropologist, but you see things common in various civilizations, and some advancement in their civilization that are common to other civilizations that are separated. And of course, it could be like they were able to cross the ocean way back when. But again, if you look at their religions and their belief systems in this part of the world, and you look at their religions and their belief systems in another part of the world, they kind of like have a common theme of some kind of advanced race that existed. And there was a war amongst these advanced races.
Yeah.
And one side lost, another side won. And the side that lost got tossed away, or like they were the fallen angels, let's say.
Yeah.
And so, I have to look at it that way. So I was trying to make sense of that and trying to fit it. It's my own personal theory of everything, and I don't have everything in it. There are a lot of gaps in the theory of everything. So I don't know if there is such a thing as a theory of everything, but within my own context, it is my theory of everything of trying to make things fit to explain what I'm experiencing now personally and what I was told professionally, what makes sense to me. And so that's where we're at now with me. And I don't want anybody to believe me. In fact, if you disbelieve me, that's fine. I'm not here to convince. I'm not here to proselytize or preach anything. I'm not saying this is the way it is. It's the way it is for me. So it works for me.
Well, let me take this opportunity to thank you for sharing some of the things you are allowed to share about your career life, but also thank you for sharing your personal thoughts and theories, because I don't think people from your with your background and your stature have the, let's say, I'm just going to say, balls to do that. And a lot of us in the UFO community are very, very thankful for that. Even though we ask a lot of damn questions, but we're still very thankful.
You're welcome. And I'm hoping that inspire others who know more of the story than I do to come forward, because there's the way to do it. There is the way to do it. You don't have to be a whistleblower. There's a way to do it in the right way that won't get you in trouble, that won't have the FBI knocking on your door. And if you're willing to share, whether it's a personal experience, if you're an experiencer, I know you're out there because I've met a lot of experiencers at CIA. And I know there are other people that have more information than I do officially.
Sure.
And if they're able to somehow put it in a context that's shareable, I wish they would come forward, because I know the story is out there.
Look, you took it upon your shoulders, to share this. Before it was, well, it still is a little bit, of course, Lou coming out with the ATIP story, Mr. Mellon, Senator Reid, Commander Fravor, Dietrich, Sean Cahill. There's more and more, Robert Salas. There's more people like you, but you are unique, I do think, because in my view, you have your professional story, which is very, 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 very interesting. But then, and this is unique to me, you are not afraid to share your personal story.
No.
Now, this is the difference.
No fear
at all. And this is the difference between all of the others and you right here. So here's the line. Here's Mr. John Ramirez. There's the rest. Because even though they worked and are vocal about disclosure and UAP, even though if they might have a personal story, they're not willing to share that because they're afraid of their credibility. So they just wanted to be professionally nuts and the bolts, and this is what we see. I'm not sure, but you're not like that. You're like, no, I saw it. Was a kid, already saw it.
Yeah.
So that's actually very brave. And I did try to grind you a little bit in the beginning of the interview because I wanted to know if you can maintain a position within the CIA if you tell a story like that. But through this interview, it's very clear you had a very beautiful career. You weren't holding anything back, and still are sharing the story, which is very, very powerful, actually.
Well, thank you very much, Max, for having me on. If anything, like I said before, I know there are people who have more information to share, and I hope, if anything, I inspire them to come forward in the future. And maybe because of this legislation now being U.S. law, that there's less stigma for them to come forward, because now Congress demands answers from the government. And even to the point where they're now saying part of that NDAA is that there are other parts that say that if there's any special access program of any kind, control access program, unacknowledged or not, that if they refuse to answer to Congress, Congress will withdraw all their money. And that's in there. That there's a funding penalty for saying, right, I'm not going to tell you about it. So, okay, you don't tell about it. That's because you have no program. Because you have no program, I'm taking your money away. And right, where there's no money in that coffer, they can't continue their program. So I'm hoping that not only do we learn about UAPs, but we learn about what the U.S. government knows about if there are alien reproduction vehicles or whatever technology we got from these crash vehicles, their materials and so forth, that they will be compelled to come forward and explain to Congress and the American people what they're holding back and what they're holding back. Can it help us? Can it help solve our problems regarding climate change, regarding our use of cleaner energy? If that can help, if they don't hold it, they keep holding it back, I think that's a criminal. That's entirely criminal of them to do that. And I hope Congress holds their feet to the fire.
Yeah. Do you have time for maybe a couple of more questions? Because I've been taking a lot of your time, almost 2 hours.
Sure.
That's amazing. Thank you. So there's something I was dying to ask you. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I should even get some footage with that. Do you have 1 second, please?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hold on. I'm gonna have to put a hard drive in now. So, sorry about that. I wanted to share some footage. Hold on. Let me pull that up for 1 second, sir. So maybe you just told us about one of your encounters when you were a child, but there were multiple, I don't understand. Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit as I try to find what I'm looking for.
Well, one encounter I had was underground. I saw some beings that were like more the traditional gray, I would say. They were short, and I was a child, not exactly a child. I think I was like 12 years old or 13 years old, and they were shorter than me, and they were more like the traditional grays. I was underground. I remember that they were leading me by the hand, and I tried to pull away from them, but they held me back and assured me that no harm would come to me, that I'll be fine. And usually when I have experiences, then they have not been traumatic. They were more like reassuring to me. And so I have snippets of those types of experiences. Most of my experiences have been with like taller beings. I identify them as saurian or reptilian because they're not mantis, they're not Nordics, and they're not grays.
Right.
So it falls out that they're more of that type. But they're not like they're not like lizards. Stop thinking of reptilians as lizard people, and they're more like they're about as lizard as we are monkeys. I mean, humans are not like the primates you see in the wild or at the zoo.
Right.
So likewise, these reptilians are not like the lizards that are crawling all over my yard right now here in Arizona. They're not like that.
No.
They're more highly evolved. So I did have like more of a traditional gray type experience at a younger age.
Okay. But let's how or where did you encounter those lizards? You said it was underground, and what?
No. These were the grays. These were the. I
Okay.
mostly see reptilian, highly evolved reptilian beings, but once I saw smaller beings underground. Like I was on some underground facility, and there were several of them, and they look more like a traditional gray.
And was that like in a work environment or
No,
something else?
I was like 12, 13 years. I was a child, 12, 13 years
Right.
old.
Okay. So I think I found what I wanted to share with
Mhm.
you, sir. Hold on. Um, let me see if I can do this. Um, Let me. I think I'm failing miserably again.
You want me to keep
uh,
talking?
yeah, hold on. I hope I'm not actually chasing my viewers away because I really want to share this with you. Let me see if I can give it one more go. Um, darn. Well, okay. So one more go. You know what? Um, I think I know what to do. Um, I think. Um, well, let me just ask the question then, because I'm desperately trying to pull up. Oh, I think I found it. Did I find it? Um, no, it's not working. Okay, so here it goes. Have you watched the Skinny Bob footage yet?
Yes, I've seen that, and I didn't know who Skinny Bob was. I really don't, and that tells you something that that this is a more recent phenomenon that occurred when I was working at CIA. The alien du jour was not Skinny Bob; it was J Rod, and J Rod was the alien that allegedly was recovered from a craft, and that he interacted with the U.S. government as J
J
Rod.
Rod.
Yeah. So that was the name I heard. And so the deputy director for operations, actually, his title when he retired was the director of the National Clandestine Services. His nickname was J Rod. And it was
Right.
like a comical name, but his name is Jose Rodriguez. He's infamous because he's the guy that allegedly destroyed all of the Al Qaeda interrogation tapes. If you remember that
Okay.
episode, and his nickname was J Rod, Jose Rodriguez, but it was sort of like a like, people treated that name with some kind of knowing comedic background of who J
Right.
Rod may have actually been. The fact that he was the head of the entire clandestine services, and he's called J Rod. It could be completely coincidental, but J Rod was the guy. So I didn't know about Skinny Bob. I knew about J Rod.
J Rod,
Yeah,
Jose Rodriguez.
yeah, yeah.
Um, have you ever heard about EB
Oh, that's EB was what the
Roswell?
biological entity. What the BE stands for? I heard that
Yeah,
in a different context, not as a name.
well, I think well, I understood it as a name, but also like as a short for something, extraterrestrial being
Biological
something.
entity was what I heard.
Uh,
Like, I,
uh, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
I don't know that as a like a name of a being. I thought it was more of a like a way of saying ET in a different way.
oh, okay. So J Rod might be EB.
I don't know. I don't know. I know J Rod is J Rod. That was the name that was in ufology for a while. People have claimed, and researchers have claimed that they've received information, classified information, that there was such a being called J Rod that
Yeah.
interacted with the U.S. government. And so, I mean, things like that are hard to prove. No one
Yeah.
ever has evidence, but there was a video associated with J Rod too.
Oh, really?
I think it's buried somewhere in the
Do
internet.
you can you give me a nudge in the right direction?
Uh, I don't even know where to look. I mean, J dash Rod video ET. I don't know.
J
That
dash
might be
Rod.
that might be the search terms to use.
Yeah. Well, I think I've taken way too much of your time. I do have a million other questions, but I'm gonna about hitchhikers and skinwalker
Mm.
and radio frequencies that could
Oh,
be picked up. If you if you have some time, I would love to keep on talking, but I don't know.
I don't know. I don't want to bore your audience
No,
because
no, no.
after
They're
all
all
these
here.
interviews, I'm not really saying anything new. I don't think. I'm just saying it in a different way. But I'm trying. I'm trying to make it interesting, and it's hard to make it interesting because basically it's. I have this one story, and I'm telling the story. And so interviewers ask me different aspects of the story, but when it comes right down to it, it's the same story. So I have
Oh,
nothing more than that because I have no
okay.
NDAs. You want to talk about like radio frequencies or electromagnetic energy or anything like that? Is that what you said?
Sure, but you know, I there's more. I would love to talk to
Yeah,
you
just
about what is high strangeness and you
yeah.
know,
I mean, a lot of things. It's not like because I worked at it. It's more because I experienced it, or because ufology is a hobby. You know, I like everyone else in your audience. I'm like deeply interested in the entire subject matter. The only thing I bring to the table is that I had a professional experience within the government that I can
yeah,
share, and that's the only
mm,
difference. But otherwise, I have to go to the same sources as everyone else. I might be
sure.
able to find sources, or I know where to look, for example, to find
But
interesting stories. But other than that, I don't know
but
what I
we've
bring to
covered
the table.
we've covered your professional story. Let's
Mhm.
talk as like minds, as friends
Mhm.
that are very interested in the same topic
Okay.
and have some fun. You
All
know.
right. Sure.
So. Um, there's so much I would like your thoughts on. For example, um, if you would explain to me what high strangeness is, and is this like something that is considered also like a term within the organization you used to work for, or is this something in ufology or in paranormal realms or something?
You know where I first heard the term high strangeness in relation to the phenomenon? Linda
No.
Moulton Howe.
Ah,
She used the word high strangeness or the term high strangeness, and I always associate it with things that can't be readily explained or explained
mhm,
away. And so that's what I
right,
consider high strangeness. So the events that occurred at Skinwalker, hard to explain, hard to
right,
explain. So that's high strangeness.
yeah,
I guess if you have a any kind of experience with craft or orbs or whatever that causes some physiological or psychological reaction within oneself, that could be described as high strangeness because you can't explain it to yourself. And so that's what I consider high strangeness. I mean, in a way, everything is high strangeness if we can't explain it.
Yeah, that's true. I have some of those experiences. Look, what you elaborated on, that since you were a child, you were very receptive to experiences, and which made you interesting for some investigation. I've
Hmm.
had weird things since I was born, right?
Hmm.
I've told the boxing glove story many times. Not sure if you got onto that, but it's a long story. But I've had some weird stuff going on. I cannot explain. But uh, what is it about Skinwalker Ranch? Do you think that makes it's almost like whenever you hear about Skinwalker Ranch, it's like someone just went all out. Let's have everything over there, like ghosts, UAPs,
Hmm.
werewolves,
Hmm. Hmm.
whatever. What is that place to you? Because and I always had a problem. Why is the paranormal connected to UAP? Because to me, UAP is not paranormal; it's the new normal because it's real.
Hmm.
So what is the difference? Why is Skinwalker a thing? And what is a hitchhiker?
Well, again, I haven't heard a hitchhiker in relation to anything except the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And that's where I heard hitchhiker. I mean, in the context of anything that's related to UFOs or aliens or whatever you want to call it. But
Yeah.
I, it's hard to, I don't know. When I read the book, which by the way, I read it at night, and I don't recommend reading it at night because it does feel like ominous. You feel a presence when you read that, and you feel like every little like bump. Um, the house settling startled me when I was reading that book. It does invoke some fear reaction or some apprehension reading that book because of what happened.
Right.
But it's, I don't know. It's just that instruments picked it up or couldn't pick it up. And when they visited the site and when they returned, there were other instances of this phenomenon following them. How does that happen? That's high strangeness. I have no explanation for that, and why that occurs at all. I think it bears more investigation. Um, in fact, if this legislation, I don't know if it counts for like investigating high strangeness, because it seems to be more about nuts and bolts. What are these UAPs?
Right.
Tell us your progress in capturing one. I don't know how you would capture one. But I don't know if it has anything to do with high strangeness, other than there's language about, like, I think it's still in there about any kind of physiological or psychological effects of encountering UAPs. That's in there, and maybe that will allow the government to do further investigations to get money to do more. It
Yeah.
seems like the investigation at Skinwalker was cut off short. I think they could have stayed there for many, many more years,
Yeah.
and maybe have involved more of the government other than the Defense Intelligence Agency and Bigelow as a contractor and his company. If more of the government was involved in that, maybe we could come up with more answers. But I don't. I'm wondering if there's anything that we picked up other than the instruments at Skinwalker. I'm wondering if it's something that occurs all the time. Can our satellites, if they're allowed to image the United States and ours are not, if our satellites, the NRO satellites, can image something over the US in that area that shows up as a signature that can be studied from
Right.
space, that doesn't involve a human going there and risking his or her life or health to investigate it. I don't know. But I was hoping that there would be more to the story.
Yeah.
And what other places on Earth are like that, other than Skinwalker Ranch? Are there other places with this high strangeness where you see this hitchhiker effect when you see
Hessdalen.
white? Where's that?
Hessdalen.
Uh, that's in Sweden or that's in Scandinavia. I don't know.
Yeah, there's well, it's not really related. It's more like camera systems that were put up by scientists. They
Uh-huh.
see, yeah, they see a lot. Um, but I I know there are some places on Earth that certainly do have a lot of activity. I think it
Mhm.
was somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle,
Oh.
Catalina Island. I think it
Mhm,
is.
mhm, mhm. Well, around the Bermuda Triangle, there is something called the South Atlantic Anomaly. For some
Yeah,
reason, when you fly satellites over this, low Earth orbiters, if they're not shielded correctly and hardened against this, they'll trip offline.
yeah,
Some of our early satellites were destroyed in the sense that they weren't blown up, but they were rendered inoperable because we did not shield them properly. And so
really.
we were able to map the South Atlantic anomaly. And so when we fly a new constellation of satellites, we make sure if they're flying over that area, they have to turn off their systems.
No way.
So that's a true fact, and that's just not just spy satellites. That's just anybody's satellite that
Whoa.
you cannot fly over there at all for some reason. And there's been
Yeah, I
theories about the Van Allen radiation belt dipping down toward the Earth, closer to the
yeah.
surface of the Earth in that area. But the highest strangeness explanation I ever heard of why that occurs in the South Atlantic anomaly and the Bermuda Triangle is because they're underneath the surface of the ocean in that part of the world. That there's still like devices left behind by Atlanteans that are still operating. And I heard that story recently at a conference I attended in Laughlin, Nevada called StarWorks USA 2021. It was sponsored by Paola Harris and Jacques Vallée. They were there
Yeah.
and they talked about this. One of the guest speakers, who is a quantum hypnosis healing technique expert, a practitioner, talked about that there might be like instruments down there that's still operating from the Atlanteans, and the government knows it. So if that's true, let's go down there and see what's down there, or maybe they're already down there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know, something electromagnetic is happening in that part of Skinwalker. And there is
Yeah.
something called the Frey effect, Frey, Frey
Yeah.
effect, that if exposed to electromagnetic energy at certain wavelengths, it does affect one's perception by one's senses. You know, what you see things and you hear things. And there's the auditory component to this. And so debunkers would say that's nonsense, but it was a real study by a scientist named Frey who documented it. So I don't know if that's caused by something underneath the ground that causes a human being to perceive things, and that effect is in the body, and that's why you take it home. Is there such a thing as an electromagnetic virus? I don't know. I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to talk about that because I don't know. I'm not a medical
No,
professional.
look, yeah, look. It takes me back to the year I had sleep paralysis,
Uh-huh.
which was damn horrible.
Mm.
I look, the way I experienced it was I would wake up lying on my belly. That's the way I sleep. I sleep on my belly,
Hmm.
feeling like there was an elephant sitting on me
Yeah,
or
wait.
something.
Hmm.
A
Yeah,
huge weight,
right.
and uh, can't move,
Hmm.
um, can't breathe,
Right.
suffocating, actually suffocating.
Hmm.
And like at some point actually thinking you have to fight for your life because you're very aware,
Hmm.
and the feeling there's a presence in the room, sometimes even seeing shapes.
Yes.
And then I would like fight, and then,
Hmm.
then I would get that first gasp of air,
Yeah.
and literally nothing in my lungs. It would be like that,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Just suffocating. And every damn night. It was horrible.
Hmm.
But then, you talk to the experts and they say, yeah, it's like, you're in between waking up and REM sleep. And that's
Hmm.
why you
Hmm.
see shapes, and there's the paralysis because you're exactly in this like twilight zone between waking up and REM sleep.
Hmm.
Not buying it.
Yeah,
It
I don't
doesn't feel
either.
like that at all.
No,
you know yeah, it feels
yeah.
evil.
I don't. I have a similar experience. I never thought of it as evil. It is uncomfortable, but see, I always talk to it. I talk to whoever's there in my mind. I ask it questions like, "What is your
I
name?"
can't talk because I'm suffocating.
Can you like even engage like a telepathic conversation?
But you know what? I because I was always panicking. I wasn't
Hmm.
thinking about that. Maybe you were more calm. So
Hmm. Yeah, I find that when I have these experiences, I can actually have a conversation with whatever beings are in that room. For some reason, they like bedrooms. They like it when it's dark, and they kind of like the hours between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. or wherever you're at. For whatever reason, I don't know why
that is
it's that
exactly the
hour.
hour.
Yep, that's very common. So I've because I've had these experiences since childhood, I learned to like communicate with them. They've always reassured me that not to worry, you're fine. We're just checking up on you. I've had a comical one where I suffered the exact or experience. I don't say suffered. I experienced the exact same phenomenon, and I had a conversation, and um, the being said, "Oh, we know you moved, and we just want to let you know that even though you moved, well, we know where you're at. Don't worry about it." So it was like, okay, and it was after I moved. I moved from Charlotte, North Carolina, to the Tucson, Arizona area, and after I moved, I had that experience that they came and said, "Yeah, we know you moved.
Mm,
We know where you're at. Don't worry about it." And so I've learned to talk with it, and I have a meditation practice that I do myself, and the
right.
meditation practice has helped me a lot because you can actually like if you want answers, if you want to communicate with higher consciousness or communicate with something out there, and you talk about high strangeness, communicate with the high strangeness out there through this meditation practice that I do. I was able to do that, and messages will come to you. They're waiting for you to ask questions. They have all the answers. That's the
Now,
way
how
I
do
see
you?
it. And then
Now, how
I
do
do
you?
that, and then they answer me back.
I'm sorry. I would love to know how you do that because I'm very into learning how to meditate. I'm trying, but I have a very hard time. Maybe because I have ADHD. So for me, it's very hard to stay focused on um, getting rid of the hyperactive brain.
Mhm.
And try to just be in a room and be open.
Yeah.
So, what's your technique, sir?
Well, it's both. It's actually there's a precursor to this. Um, I I'm a firm believer in like good nutrition and health, and so I eliminated like as much as possible sugar from my diet.
Mhm.
I try to eliminate foods that contain artificial coloring, artificial any kind of artificial ingredients or preservatives. So I try to
Mhm.
buy organic as much as possible. And so I found that to be helpful to cleanse oneself first physically, to get rid of the toxins in one's body. And then, in conjunction with that, and maintaining that type of healthy lifestyle and
Mhm.
healthy nutrition, healthy food choices, then to do the meditation, and that helps. And so, what I do is I imagine um, in the solar plexus chakra, I imagine all of my life force energy
Yeah.
as a sphere. And to preface that, I'm a firm believer in this. This is how I describe a soul. A soul to me is the relationship I have with this sentient light being
Mhm.
I have a symbiotic relationship with a sentient light being. A light
Mhm.
being like not a corporeal presence, but more of an energy presence. Some
Yeah.
people talk to Octurans or get downloads from Octurans or Pleiadians.
Would that
Uh,
be would that be something like just a conscious energy?
it could be, it could very well be,
Mhm.
but it seems to be like I started here in the solar plexus, and I imagine that ball of energy there. And so one
Mhm.
of the practices I do to do that, I used to like, if you calm your mind
Mhm.
and basically like not not think, just calm your mind and just concentrate on one's breathing, and you put your hands together, you will feel like some energy or some ball of energy being formed. You can actually feel some little bit of resistance, and you can feel your hands heating up. And it could be that your palms are closer together, but for me, it's a palatable experience that I feel. And I bring that to my solar plexus and go through all of my chakras to my root chakra, all the way down to my feet, down to the center of the earth. And I have an affirmation to the earth. I thank the earth for providing me with life. And I ask the earth, uh, I'm sorry for all the things that we humans have done to hurt you. And then I bring that back, that energy back to me, to the solar plexus, to the heart chakra, to the throat, third eye, and crown chakra, and I send it out to the universe.
Mhm.
And then for the universe, I thank the universe um, for being able to experience the wonders of the universe, and to ask humbly for um, a message, a message to communicate with me, if it is the universe that wants to communicate with me. Say, I'm here. I'm willing to accept your message. I have questions for you, and then bring it all back down. And then it's remarkable for me, when I close my eyes, all these shapes and things happen in my mind. I can actually see geometric shapes of various colors. Mostly for me, it's green. Green is prevalent, and they start forming. And then I ask it questions,
Right.
whatever questions you have. And sometimes the answer is like no answer is also an answer. But
Right.
I've had great experiences with that, and so that's how I do it, and that's helped me kind of tune me into whatever wavelength of light I resonate at. Because I think, like, all the information is there, but we're like tuning into like one radio station when it's all there, and we stay on that one radio station. What we need to do is retune ourselves to our radio station for the music we like, and not listen to what the music somebody else likes. And once you find that resonance with yourself, and then it's easier for that communication to come down. So
Right.
that's what I do. That's helped me with
Well,
this experience.
I do think you're a very advanced uh, meditationalist. Or, how do you call that? Because I do have a hard time to really tap into the deep consciousness. I did when I was a teenager. Had a weird experience. I was in a youth camp, and one of the teachers, he did a lot of meditation, and well, he invited some of us to try to meditate, but and then he would talk us through it, right?
Mhm.
Close your eyes, imagine you're in an empty room, blah, 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 you know, and I don't know what the guy did, but I just went down like as if I were sucked into it, like a
Mhm.
super fast like subway or something, but
Mhm.
with colored walls going
Yeah.
really, 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 really fast.
Yes.
And I don't know, it was like a ride to me or something. But I felt very at ease, very peaceful. uh,
Mhm.
just went for it. I was 15 years old, didn't know whatever I was supposed to feel, look at, or whatever. Then snapped out of it, and he said, "Okay, so what did you see? What did you feel?" And I told him, "Yeah, I got
Mhm.
sucked into this train, and it was with colors." And he was like, "You went through your chakras." I
Yeah.
was like, "I did what?"
Yeah.
And he said,
Yeah. Right.
yeah, that a lot of people don't get there. And I was like, well, how did I do it then? And he said, yeah, I don't know. But it was weird.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I've been trying to do that ever since, but I don't have the guy to talk me through it or something. Yeah. I'd like to have you know, a handbook or something to get there again. But I'll try. I'll keep on practicing. John, I think I've taken way too much of your time, and it's been over 2.5 hours, and I can't thank you enough for sticking up with me and and look, open invitation. I hope to talk to you anytime soon, and thank you for sharing.
Sure, Max. Again, I appreciate your invitation to come to speak with you and your audience, and sure, we'll do this again.
Yes, sir. So, my audience, thank you for sticking around. Um, this was an amazing conversation to me. So, again, thank you, John. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And up until next time, I'm going to end the broadcast. And well, it's late over here, almost 11:30.
Mm,
So, for you, you still have a bit of the day. So,
yes.
guys, up until next time.